Are you looking to start an online business or side hustles and you're worried about failing in the business? In this video, I'll be sharing the 8 lessons I learned from my first online business that failed, which I wish I had known about before starting it. So my aim for sharing this video is to equip as many people that are looking to start an online business with the requisite knowledge and lessons learned from my own experience. So this is because I'm an ardent fan of generating extra income, and I encourage as many people as possible to embark on initiatives that can give you extra income, such as the online side hustles. Hey everyone, this is Ebuka and this is the Finance Wish channel. If this is your first time on this channel, ensure to share with your friends, like and subscribe so you don't miss out on the value I'll be providing in subsequent videos going forward. So the finance channel basically focuses on topics around income generation, savings and investments, debt management, and overall financial freedom. Now, before I start, I want to establish something. Not many people are comfortable sharing or talking about their failures. This is because of the assumed humiliation that comes with sharing such information with other people. I've come to the conclusion there is no such thing as failure. Rather, these are typically lessons we learn from our experiences. However, losses without resilience ends up becoming failure. Now, let me walk you through some of my experiences as while I share the lessons I've learned over time. So I started e-commerce like any other excited person would. I was basically excited about the prospect of buying and selling, being able to reach other people in other parts of the world. So the idea for online business was first conceptualized in my mind in 2020. So I'm going to split my story into different phases while I still talk about the lessons I learned from each of the phases. The first phase I'm going to talk about is what I call the research phase. So at the research phase, my focus was on finding out everything about this business I wanted to do, including the online platform I wanted to sell on, the type of products I wanted to sell, where I wanted to purchase those products from, how to ship the products, including the customers that will be buying the products potentially. It's safe to say literally everything about the online business at that point was valuable information to me. So I typically was researching on everything online business related. So this took me several months to accomplish before I finally summoned courage to start the business, this online business I'm talking about. However, I was certain that online business was definitely my thing. So the exciting thing is that I found out the products I wanted to sell, and as at that time there were just 3 brands selling the product I wanted to sell at that point. So this brought a lot of confidence in me, thinking I was going to be a walk in the park and a breeze for me. Now onto my first lessons learned from this phase. So my first lesson is what I call the delayed implementation. Now delayed implementation just simply says that whatever idea you think that is an amazing idea you think about, remember you're not only the one thinking about such ideas. So you need to know that there are thousands, maybe even millions of people thinking about the same thing you're thinking about. And all of these people want to execute the idea just the way you're thinking of how to execute yours. So all I'm trying to say is that if you don't act fast, you find out that someone is going to put out that idea just before you, and that makes you automatically a follower. So act fast today. So the second lesson I learned is what I call analytical paralysis. So when I actually started, I did a lot of research and I spent months doing research, and I felt that that was very crucial for me to start this business. Now, I'm not saying that research is not important. Research is very important. However, you need to remember that you cannot learn all the techniques, strategies and skills you need to thrive in that business to become successful by just reading about it online or just doing basic research. Actually have to get into the business as soon as possible. That's the best way for you to learn the business. Get your hands dirty. For instance, there's so many things I figured out through the online business after I had started the business. For instance, I figured out the box size I needed, the quantity of products I needed to put in a box, the nature of inspection I needed to do, the regulatory requirements that was needed, third-party logistics company I had to use, and many more things I learned just by going into the business automatically. In addition to all these things I've said, you need to remember that business is all about risk-taking. Nobody ever gives you a 100% guarantee that a business is going to be successful from the beginning. Overall, we always embark on businesses with an optimistic mindset, hoping that it's going to succeed whichever ways. I would, however, recommend as a newbie to any business that you don't have an understanding or skills in to ensure you take calculated risk. Don't go all in. That's very important. So the next phase I'll be taking you to is what I call the product analysis phase. So at this point, I had already completed my research and I determined what I wanted to produce or what I wanted to sell. So the next thing was for me to determine manufacturers who are willing to produce those things I wanted to sell, the price points they were willing to produce at for me, and the amount of quantity I needed to buy at my desired level. So this phase was pretty easy for me because all I needed to do was go on the platforms where I would find the manufacturers, reach out to them, compare prices across different manufacturers and negotiate what the price would be for myself, of course at a desirable level for me. So it was very easy for me to negotiate prices and of course place an order for samples of prototypes I needed. Now, one lesson I learned from this phase, which I think I missed and was super significant, is what I call the analysis checklist. So I realized eventually that I missed out on key components of my analysis of the manufacturer, their terrain, their geographical location, as well as things like holidays and many other factors about understanding where the manufacturer is based. Now, this was even more important because the manufacturer's location was in a different country from where I was and I never visited the place. I had no understanding how things work or operate in those areas. So specifically, I was producing in China, I was living in Canada, which is completely far from each other and different time zones. So I needed to understand so many things which I did not take my time to really understand. So one of those key areas which I missed out significantly on was on the Chinese New Year, which happened sometime in February, and I was totally unaware of this. In fact, I was told about the Chinese New Year by the manufacturer I was trying to produce for me, who also explained how sacrosanct those times of the year would always be. So they basically explained that most companies tend to close for the year at that time of the year, which is about one whole month of holiday. So the news of this really hit me so hard because I had not factored that in my initial plans, and considering how urgently I wanted to produce, I was pressed with time. So the manufacturer gave me the option to place a full order for the products I wanted to get rather than getting the sample which I was going to run an inspection on. So typically for anybody, this might seem like a quick getaway, but I was not willing to risk the chance of selling a lower quality product if not fully inspected. So what did I do? I simply declined the offer and ordered the single sample that way, and decided to wait for one whole month for the Chinese holiday to be over. So the purpose of me obtaining the sample or prototype was for me to run my own personal inspection and test of the product, physical check of the product, and compare that with competitors' products to be sure I'm at par with the level of quality I wanted. So that was non-negotiable. So in conclusion, if I had an analysis checklist that showed things or factors I needed to consider for each parameter or each area of focus, I would not have missed that phase. Now, typically recommend you have an analysis checklist if you don't have one and you're about to start an online business today. So the next phase is what I call the pricing phase. So remember I said I was a 1 month wait time. I was simply waiting for the Chinese holiday to be over. Then I decided, why not price my product and determine what I should sell my products at eventually, right? Very simple. So I did a simple pricing to factor in all my costs, such as production costs, the packaging costs, regulatory related costs, physical inspections, customs, shipping costs, third-party logistic costs. There's so many costs I had to factor into my pricing model. And then based on my total cost, I was able to determine a reasonable margin that would be a fair gain for me. Now, one of the major mistakes I made in my pricing phase was establishing a cast-in-stone price that I held on to throughout the life cycle of my products. So it's safe to say I was not meticulous about updating the pricing I had done initially to reflect all the emerging and dynamic risks as well as changes in my business at every point in time. It's fair that an individual will simply argue that, there may be time constraint, but I think it's very crucial, which you must not miss out. So this brings me to the fourth lesson I learned, which is what I call the pricing and continuous repricing. As a business owner, it's important to price your products or services very effectively. So pricing will typically require that you factor in all costs that is required to produce the original goods or service and deliver it in its final state to your customers. However, pricing does not just end there. It must be continuously assessed, not just based on changes in the market, but also based on what your potential assessment of the risk would be in the future as a result of every changes that you are seeing in the market or by your competitors. For instance, if you notice a lot of influx in competitors into your market or your industry, there's a high risk that the prices will drop much faster than you had earlier planned. And when I mean prices, I mean your sales price or the sales price of your competitors. So at that point, you need to go back to reprice to ensure that you are in line with the competition and you are very conservative with your margin. Otherwise, you're not going to sell anything. So the fourth phase is the production phase. So at this point, the Chinese New Year was already over, which was about 1 month after I placed my order for the prototype or sample I'd requested for. So I reached out to the manufacturer, gave them my feedback regarding the sample or prototype I had ordered, and I felt it was just going to be an easy way all through. But I was in for a big surprise. The manufacturer informed me that because I had not placed an order before they had gone on the holidays for the large quantity, I would have to wait a couple of weeks for them to attend to the backlog they had already received before the holiday and during the course of the holiday. Now, this was a problem because I was not proactive to reach out to find out when next the availability for placing an order would be. Unfortunately, this took me another 5 good weeks of wait time. Anyways, I eventually placed the order I wanted to place at that point based on all the changes that had been made and my requests, and the manufacturer started production of those items. So this brings me to my 5th lesson learned, which is you need to limit your exposure to a reasonable loss tolerance level. Now, how do I mean? Whenever you're embarking on a business you've never done before, where you're depending so much on assumptions, estimates, or projections, it's important for you to establish a risk tolerance level. In other words, how much maximum you're willing to lose in that business. This is just the reality. Now, in relation to my story, I'm just going to tell you what I did that was specifically wrong from my perspective. So when I placed an order for 2,400 units of the products I wanted to sell at a go. So I ordered this very large quantity because I was highly optimistic about the outcome of my sales of this product and the margin I'd already calculated from my initial pricing. Remember, I did not reprice to be sure that they reflected the current situations. However, if I had repriced or had done a reassessment of the situation I was in at that point after the long wait time, and by the way, this was about 4-5 months after my initial identification of the product. If I had done this reanalysis, I would have reduced my exposure to maybe 800 units rather than 2,400 units. So automatically, this would have significantly reduced my exposure to the losses, even if I did not gain anything from those sales. But just to continue my story, the manufacturer still did the production of those 2,400 units, got my package designs, put my products into packages, got the physical and regulatory inspections completed, and then shipped my products to its destination, which was in the US at that time. So the last phase is what I call the product storage, onboarding, and sales phase. So at this point, all my production had been completed, the inspections had been done, regulatory requirements had been met, and my products were already in transit to my destination of sales. So what I typically did in this stage was to list my products on the online platform. I had to also seek a third-party logistic company that was going to store my products for the time being, and also to determine how to move the products even into the online platform's storage. So the major challenge I faced in this phase was actually getting a third-party logistics company that was willing to service a small seller like myself. Now, this was a very significant challenge for me because if I was going to ship my products, there was nowhere it was going to be stored, which means that it could get damaged, it could get lost, or something might happen to it. So this brings me to the 6th lesson which I learned through this process. And that 6th lesson is to belong to a community of like-minded people, such as you as a seller. So I would typically recommend that you keep people that do the same thing or sell the same thing that you sell close to you in your space, because these are the people that will support you through those times when the chips are down, or how to navigate through your challenges, or how to get through any turmoil that you're facing through your process. For instance, in my case, getting a third-party logistics company that was willing to service small sellers like myself was really hard. I tried searching on my own, I did everything, I did a Google search. I bet you I was not able to find anyone. However, joining a community of like-minded sellers like myself on this same platform or even different platforms, based on that, I was able to get someone recommended to me. And that was how I was able to move my products to the warehouse. So I typically join platforms like Facebook groups, Telegram, WhatsApp, and many others. So you might want to consider all the options that are available to you before making your decision on finalizing the process of your sales. Now, the last lesson, which I think is the most important and I saved for the last, is what I call challenges beyond your control. So it's very crucial for you to understand that the business environment is typically hostile and will always be challenging. The earlier you actually remember this or know this, the better it is for you to get prepared for the worst. And now I'm not saying that the worst is going to happen, but it's always important to prepare for the worst if it happens. Now, there are many factors that could work against you as an online seller or service provider. The first is what I call the competitors. Now, in my case, it took me quite a long time, almost 6 months, if not 7 months, to get my product from the idealization phase all the way to listing and sales phase. This delay was adequate enough for new competitors or sellers to get into the same market I was selling in, produce similar or lower quality items compared to what I was selling, and then significantly crash the prices so that my margins could not match with their selling prices. Now, as if that was not even enough, the numerous influx of competitors into that space resulted in a lot of saturation that made it very hard for me to differentiate myself and my brand as a whole. Now, this is something you could face as a seller on those platforms, and you need to be prepared for it. The second challenge I also faced was the e-commerce online platform itself. So my account on the online platform, that's the online e-commerce platform, was hacked twice. Specifically, prohibited keywords were included at the back end of my listing, which I could not even remove. It was beyond my control. Now, it's important for me to establish the fact that this was not my problem because I use very unique and secure passwords whenever I access the platform. Now, the algorithm of the online platform was designed to pull down listings or product listings that had those prohibited keywords at the back end. So someone was definitely infusing those keywords without me being able to change that. So what was the impact? For each of those 2 times when my account was hacked, my listing page was pulled down for about 2 weeks, which means 1 month of lost sales or no sales at all. Now, mind you, I actually reached out to the customer service to see if it could be resolved as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, those online platforms did not respond as promptly as I wanted them to. As such, my accounts were affected, my sales was affected, and there was significant lost revenue. So the next challenge beyond control could be your shipping delays. Now, I did not face this specifically because I sent in my products by air. However, for people that shipped during this time, as at that point, they had faced significant delays because I remember a ship had a major issue that blocked the waterways for a few weeks. So assuming this was a business, you would typically be affected by delayed deliveries and delayed supply of your raw materials or products to your destination. The last factor I think which was beyond my control was the delays at the customs point for inspection. However, that wasn't significant for me. So my 8th lesson, which might be an unpopular opinion, is you need to know when to exit the business and you need to know when to activate such an exit plan. Now, I understand no one ever starts a business with failure in mind. However, it's understandable sometimes a business could go bad and there could actually be several indicators that your business is failing. But I've noticed that several people choose to ignore those indicators. Now, knowing when to exit an investment or divest from a business is an important business skill that everyone should have. So if you have noticed persistent cost overruns or several losses which you have been unable to salvage, you need to assess if such investment still has the potential for continuous growth. So if you perform such an assessment and you determine that there is no more potential, of course you have to be very honest with yourself. Rather than losing more funds, it might be the best point for you to discontinue that business or product sales. So I typically like to categorize my investment into a model called the BCG matrix. So for simplicity purposes, the BCG matrix allows you to categorize your investment into different areas or strata. For instance, we have the star, we have the cash cow, we have the dog, and we have the question mark. It also requires that you establish action plan for each of those areas where your investment falls into. For instance, in this case of this business, I classified it eventually as the dog, which means I had a low market share in a low potential for growth market. And of course, my low market share was evidenced by the low sales I was having and the low social proof, which was the star ratings I had at that point. And in terms of the growth, the market had become saturated with a lot of competitors at similar prices or even lower prices than I was selling. And of course, I came to the conclusion that there was no potential for me to make even more profit from this business, even if I continued into the long term. That was the perfect time for me to divest. Now, if you want me to explain how I specifically use this BCG matrix in my business investment or other investments I do, feel free to drop a comment and I'm going to explain this in a different video. So these are all the lessons I learned from my first online e-commerce business that have helped me overall subsequently in other initiatives I've embarked on. I hope all these tips I've given will help you make a better decision around setting up your business or expanding your business venture as the case may be, including side hustles that you decide to do or other investment initiatives you embark on. Now, lastly, if you found this video very insightful and you learned a lot from it, feel free to share with your friends that will also find it very helpful to their business or whatever initiatives they want to do. And most importantly, like and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any other valuable video I'm going to be sharing subsequently. Alright, thanks for taking the time to listen to me and watch this video. See you at the next video. Bye.